Christina. No, thank you for having me. Really quick snapshot of myself. So I currently work within the flexible space market, and I have for some time. I started my own flexible space business about 4 or 5 years ago, where we specifically turned hotel spaces and restaurant spaces into a network of flexible spaces, and that kind of helped take me on my journey to now be in charge of flexible space solutions over at JLL for ANZ, which has been super exciting, and I can share more about that and the outlooks of that in this interview. And then I guess prior to that, what always led me towards the reuse of space and flexible space is my fascination in sustainability. So before physically getting involved with space, if you will, was doing a lot of carbon conservation stuff. So rainforest protection, we're still protecting about 1 million hectares of rainforest to date over in Indonesia, Aceh and Malaysia and all those kind of areas. And always been fascinated on how we could, make the most of stuff or be sustainable on a day-to-day basis as well.
It's fantastic. Now, you've seen a lot of change over the course of your career. What's been the biggest pivot for you in response to COVID-19?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because we get to see the changes from lots of sides of the market, both from an investor perspective, so the landlords and also the occupiers and tenants, but also professionally from our company and the way that we've been changing. But from a personal perspective, what I've really been seeing is that in response to COVID, there's a big question mark and uncertainty of what it's going to look like post-pandemic and once we get onto the other side of this. And the ways that we've really been helping, especially, the landlords understand what that's going to look like is helping demonstrate that, there always will be a need for flexible space. And in fact, the requirement for flexible space is going to grow. So there's always been those important soft drivers on top of the commercial viability of the flex space, including, collaboration, specifically for landlords to elevate the asset of their building and portfolio to give that product to their tenants. Because a lot of landlords see it as an opportunity to retain their tenants if they have access not only to the floors within their building, but also, X amount of floors of really beautifully well done flexible space with a food and beverage offering and lounge. So really seeing how the shift to flexible space has become more and more important, not just because of those original soft drivers that have always been there, but also to answer the call of what some of these corporate tenants are really asking for. They want a bit more flexibility. They want to de-risk the amount of space that they take on through traditional leases, and not to say that they won't in the future, but it's going to be a real mixture. I think it's almost like this whole work from home thing that's been going on. It's been a real litmus test for a lot of employees as well, to start seeing that there's a lot of efficiency and productivity levels they can still hit from people working from home. So that's going to allow them to start rethinking, we don't need all of this fixed space. We might get our employees and our team members to work from home a bit, or also work from flexible spaces. So we're also going to see, a shift in that a little. But I think the biggest thing, and we've been seeing it for a while now, is this movement towards flexibility and how particularly the landlords are going to accommodate for that.
Economically as well. Now that employees are kind of used to not having to come into the office every single day, having that one single fixed desk for them doesn't make so much sense. But from a hygiene perspective, it must be quite challenging for regular offices to figure out how they're going to have a less dense office so that there's more space per person. And then if they have to share desks, how they're actually going to go about disinfecting desks between use. So as a flex space operator and a strategist, how do you see that coming into place with the return to work?
Yeah, great question. It actually works out quite well for flexible space operators, and also, and what I will add is that there's a growing savviness from investors and landlords to actually own these operations. So rather than bring a third-party operator and do it themselves, and them take a lease on the space and then run a business, which is a flex space, we're seeing this growing need and trend of landlords actually building it themselves, branding themselves, and then bringing an operator to run it for a fee. So almost like a management agreement, very similar to how you see the Hiltons of the world today. Once upon a time, they all owned the hotels, but now they don't. Those assets and those buildings are actually owned by, property funds or other owners or investors. And then the Hilton is just the brand that comes in and runs it as a Hilton hotel and gets paid a fee. When you're starting to deal with flex spaces, all of those things gets kind of packaged up and taken care of by, the operator. So if you have, say, over 2 floors, a number of companies working from there, traditionally as a company owner, you're going to have to figure out how to disinfect the desks, how to be spatially aware within the floor plan. All that kind of stuff is being taken care of by the flexible space, whether it be the community manager, the floor plan from day one. And there's a lot of research and resources being put into that. Short term from the pandemic is this trend towards the, I always get tongue tied when I try and say this, the de-densification of desks within spaces. And that doesn't mean you're going to see one desk and then nothing else around it, but there's definitely going to be this awareness on how do you take that behavioral learning of, being spatially aware of around you and social distancing and apply it not just to existing floor plans, but for the ones who are thinking forward enough to start building and designing them today and to take those into considerations. But, there's a lot of technology going into it so that, everything from sensory imagery to sensors on not having to necessarily press buttons on a lift or open door handles. There's a lot of stuff going into that. But that being said, I think one of the key advantages, even from the landlord's perspective, when they're looking to their tenants is, hey, if you do take, let's say, a couple of office suites within our flexible space floor where you also get all of these other areas, we've actually got a cleanliness program so that we'll take care of that for you and make sure it's as good as possible. I mean, then there's the little things, right? Like if you take a commercial floor, traditionally the ventilation systems would be for that one floor open plan. Whereas when you look at a flex space, at least the ones that, some of the more premium ones tailored specifically for landlords, you'll have your own HVAC systems for each of the private offices. And as you were saying earlier, for those that actually come in to work, not on a day-to-day basis at the desk necessarily, but commute in for meetings or projects or whatnot, or presentations, this is where the importance of these communal areas actually become very important as a differentiator for the asset, because if they commute in for a meeting, they'll also want some sort of, bespoke offering to be paired with that. And then obviously the design of those floors also change to be more post-COVID friendly.
That's fantastic. It's certainly going to be an enormous change moving forward. But I do think that the trend that a lot of us are already seeing is only being accelerated by COVID-19. So yeah, even from a personal perspective, like a lot of projects that I was working on earlier in the year have been escalated. Some have slowed down, obviously, because there is some strategic plays that need to be made by certain portfolios on what they want to focus on. But overall, there's a growing awareness of flexible space has always been around, but particularly not just for the benefits of having it, but there will be a growing demand for more flexibility in terms of occupiers or tenants not wanting to lock themselves into 5 to 10 year leases, but hey, maybe we'll do that with a percentage of what we normally had, but we're going to, because that could be a short-term strategy, right? To de-densify your office space. So rather than change the fit out completely, you send X amount of your staff to a flex space that you also put on. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so very much for taking the time, Tashi. Really appreciate it. And stay safe out there, okay?
Yeah, you too. Thank you. See you later.
Thanks.